His name is Gao Xiaoling, an ordinary college student. His roommate unplugged his alarm charger, so he missed his alarm and had a car accident at 8. Now he has woken up and found himself in an apocalyptic world. A man slashed one of the octopus's tentacles, but the octopus regenerated it at an incredible speed. The man shouted to his comrades that it was no good and the monster could regenerate. At first, Xiaoling thought he was the chosen one with a halo of glory. He believed he would kill all the monsters and save the world like the main character. But he quickly realized something was wrong. The first time he led the survivors out of the siege but was bitten by a zombie and died. Yet, when he opened his eyes again he was back in the same spot. The second time he used his previous life's experience to lead them through the zombies, but they starved to death. The third time he disguised himself as a zombie to steal food but was shot in the head by the military. The fourth time he finally awakened his powers but was betrayed and killed after establishing his base. Then came the fifth time, the sixth time, and every time he died he returned to the day he first arrived. Xiaoling was frustrated. Knowing it was already his 9th time, he gave up hope and lay flat, but he was still caught as a conscript. Suddenly, the octopus swung all of its tentacles around, and the men who were trying to fight it ran away. One of them shouted that the people in the safe house were still waiting for supplies to save their lives, but the leader yelled that if they didn't run, they would all die there. The men rushed away, leaving behind a poor lady who was caught by the monster, begging for help and pleading not to be left behind. The octopus tightly held the lady, making her cry and scream in pain. Xiaoling, who saw it, thought that since there was no way out, he might as well have some fun this time. At least before he died, he wanted to help the lady. He dashed forward, raised his sword, and released his power, shocking the men. They worriedly asked what he was doing, thinking he was going to get himself killed. Xiaoling aimed his sword at the octopus's tentacle and easily slashed it, forcing it to release the lady. She thanked him for saving her, but he just dashed away, shouting for her to run. The octopus chased him as he ran for his life toward a nearby store. Fortunately, he managed to enter the store and began devouring anything he could get his hands on. He grabbed a soda, drinking it excitedly and thinking to himself that he had finally drunk soda again and missed it so much. The octopus, pissed off at seeing him happily drinking inside the store, approached and bent down to look at him closer. It raised its tentacle to squeeze him to death, but Xiaoling, still happy, thought to himself that he could die without regrets now. He closed his eyes and then heard the octopus screech. A moment later he opened his eyes, confused to find himself still inside the store. He looked around, wondering why he was still there and why he hadn't returned to the starting point. He checked his body and asked aloud if it meant he hadn't died. Suddenly, a voice told him that he had died and was revived. Panicking, Xiaoling looked around and asked who was talking. The system popped up in front of him and congratulated him for activating it, introducing itself as his bound apocalypse system, code number 2333. A bright light appeared behind him, surprising Xiaoling, who then hugged 2333 with tears in his eyes, shouting that it was finally here and that he had been waiting for it forever. He tearfully asked if the system knew how miserable he was and told it to feel sorry for him. 2333 simply bounced away from him and explained that it was late because it had a little accident. Xiaoling asked what it meant by accident, and 2333 replied that he might not believe it, but its roommate stole its charger, so its alarm didn't go off. Since Xiaoling had experienced it himself, he responded that he believed it. He then told 2333 it was okay to be late and asked if it brought golden fingers, equipment and plugins. 2333 excitedly replied yes, but then added that, according to the procedure, Xiaoling needed to listen to it and read the mission instructions first. 2333 explained that Xiaoling was currently in a post-apocalyptic world and his mission was to save the world and restore it to peace. Only by completing this task could he be resurrected into the real world, but failure would result in complete annihilation. 2333 added that Xiaoling had a total of 10 chances and had already wasted 9 of them, meaning this was his last one. Panicked, Xiaoling worriedly asked 2333 what he had just done. 2333 told him not to worry about the details because time was short and they needed to make every minute count. 2333 then released a purple power around Xiaoling and told him to get ready for his first mission. The system screen showed his first mission: sell snacks within the day to earn 50 crystals. Upon completion he could earn points to exchange for attribute values, space area and other rewards. Xiaoling sat in a daze next to a food stall on the ground. Snapping out of it, he clenched his teeth in anger and shouted, asking if he had to set up a food stall. The zombies nearby turned their heads at the noise and began walking toward him. Panicking, Xiaoling ran away while shouting that he was going to get eaten before he could sell anything. While he was running as fast as he could, 2333 appeared and asked him what he was running from. Xiaoling snapped back, asking why he would wait to be bitten. He forcefully stopped himself from running when he remembered that he now had the system. He arrogantly ordered 2333 to wipe out all the zombies for him, which pissed 2333 off. The system shouted at him to call it 2333 properly. Xiaoling smirked and asked what his superpower was, demanding the agility of a leopard, the speed of an eagle and the strength of a bear. 2333 then displayed his status window. Xiaoling saw that his strength, speed, perception and inventory were all not yet rated, while his wisdom was 2 and his stall area was 2 square meters. He asked 2333 what was up with the not yet rated status. 2333 explained that his values were too low to meet the minimum score standard and that his physical attributes were currently abysmal. If he wanted to improve, he would need to earn points and exchange them. Xiaoling groaned and asked if that meant he was only good at brain power. At that moment, one of the zombies caught up to him and tried to grab him. Fortunately, he managed to jump to the side to avoid it. He started running again, shouting at 2333 that it was a liar for claiming he had superpowers. 2333 simply responded that it had already given him his powers. Xiaoling suddenly remembered a saying. Once upon a time, there was a street vendor no one cared about, and people only regretted it after he was gone. This gave him an idea. He turned to 2333 and asked if it meant the old rag. 2333 angrily asked what he meant by rag, shouting that it was an upgrade tool. Xiaoling immediately turned around and rushed back toward the stall, shouting in frustration that 2333 should have told him earlier. He grabbed a metal stick lying on the ground and stopped running when a zombie appeared in front of him. He swung the stick and hit the zombie in the neck, managing to push it back. However, a zombie behind him shoved him to the ground, causing him to slam down and drop the stick. Xiaoling immediately rolled toward his stall and jumped inside the rag. The zombies rushed toward him, jaws open and reaching for him. He smiled nervously, unable to believe he was going to die again so quickly. It would be a new record. His hands shook as he thought it was over. Even though he saw food around him, he had no appetite. He covered his head and accepted his fate. But then a shield appeared around the stall. The shield blocked the zombies, hiding him from their vision. Confused, Xiaoling watched in shock as the zombies turned away and walked off. Stunned, he muttered in disbelief, asking if the zombies were blind. 2333 appeared and explained that it wasn't just a rag. Xiaoling immediately grabbed the cloth, realizing it had saved him. He held it to his face and praised it, declaring it was not a rag but a silk cloth. He then asked 2333 if the shield function only worked on zombies and what would happen if other mutated creatures appeared. 2333 explained that the cloth could block any form of attack and that, as long as Xiaoling stayed within the range of the stall, nothing from the outside world could harm him. Eyes wide, Xiaoling asked if 2333 was serious. He stood up, closed his eyes and spun around with his magical rag, thinking he was invincible. 2333 however warned him not to get too excited. It explained that the shielding function of the stall props could only be used 3 times a day. If he failed to complete the task within the time limit, the function would fail. 2333 reminded him that the sun would set in half an hour. After dark, zombie activity would increase significantly. Xiaoling grumbled that the area had just been swept by zombies, so there was no one around. He asked if they seriously expected him to open a stall there. At that moment he heard someone say, "Today is really lucky." Surprised, Xiaoling turned to see 3 men approaching. One of them told his comrades that they had stumbled across an unexpected harvest and that their boss would be surprised. Xiaoling thought to himself that heaven must be helping him. The men approached him, curious about his presence. When they noticed the candy in his food stall, they asked how such things could exist in a place like that. Xiaoling, now excited, enthusiastically told them that the small shop not only had candy but also chips, shrimp chips and soda. He asked them what they would like to eat. The men were shocked and excited to confirm there were potato chips, beef jerky, and soda, things they hadn't tasted in 3 years. Xiaoling, eager to make a sale, told them it was his first day setting up a stall and that fate had brought them together. He promised not to sell the goods at 998 or even 98 crystals, but only 50 crystals for all the snacks. Smiling, he asked them if it wasn't a good deal. The men stared at each other in silence before bursting into laughter. They thought Xiaoling must be crazy to expect them to pay for the snacks. One of the men pulled out a gun, grabbed a soda and mockingly shouted that he was in a good mood, so he would let Xiaoling off with a warning this time. Xiaoling realized they had no intention of paying and snatched the soda back. In disappointment, he told them he thought he'd found saviors but had only wasted his time. Angered, the man aimed the gun at him and shouted that he was asking for it. The man pulled the trigger but the stall's shield blocked the bullet, sending it ricocheting back and striking the man's head armor. The force of the impact made the man dizzy, and he collapsed to the ground, shocking his comrades. The men asked why the gun misfired and wondered if the kid was an Esper. They turned to look at him again, shouting that there was no way he was an Esper because they had never heard of such a bizarre ability. Meanwhile, Xiaoling was hugging the rag, calling it his treasure and marveling that it could even deflect bullets. Watching him, the men concluded that, no matter how they looked at it, he was just an idiot. One of the men demanded to know who he was and what kind of trick he was pulling. Xiaoling simply called them fools and claimed that while there were countless Espers in the world, there was only one chosen one. Him. Smiling, he added that, for just 50 crystal cores, they could take home a massive snack bundle and even get a free photo with him. He asked them if they were sure they didn't want to consider the offer. Enraged, the men rushed at him, shouting that they weren't 3-year-olds and insisting that the gun must have malfunctioned. They declared that they would kill him this time, but Xiaoling calmly remarked that some people just never listened and were asking for trouble. One of the men lunged at him and tried to punch him, but as Xiaoling expected, the shield activated and blocked the attack, pushing the man away from the stall. The man screamed in pain when he saw his fingers bent and bleeding. The old man, holding a knife, hesitated, prompting the other 2 men to yell at him to stop standing around and kill the kid already. Xiaoling glared at the old man, and the intensity of his stare left the man frozen in fear. As the old man approached, visibly shaking, he suddenly stepped back, turned around and ran away, shouting that the kid was a monster and that he didn't want to die. The 2 remaining men were stunned. They shouted after the old man, calling him a coward and begging him not to leave them behind. However, fear overtook them too, and they turned to follow, leaving Xiaoling standing there, shouting that he just wanted to ask if there was anyone else around. Xiaoling's attention shifted to the ground when he noticed the bag the men had been carrying started to move. Curious, he poked it and wondered aloud if it could be some kind of animal. As the bag wriggled more, he unwrapped the rope and something shot out at incredible speed, startling him. When he got a better look, he saw that it was a lady with long white hair and a thin, almost fragile-looking body. She turned back to look at him and Xiaoling froze in surprise, struck by how beautiful she was. The moment was short-lived however, as the lady suddenly snapped and dashed toward him. Realizing this wasn't the time to be ogling a beauty, Xiaoling turned and ran, thinking she must be a zombie. The lady swung her sharp claw-like fingers at him, and he barely managed to jump away in time to avoid her attack. He panicked and wondered aloud what the heck was happening and when zombies could move so fast. He picked up an empty magazine and hurled it at her, but the lady simply blocked it with her hand and continued chasing him. He sprinted toward his stall, grabbing the rag with desperation. Knowing he had already used up all 3 shield chances, he muttered that if he'd known, he would have saved them because if he got caught now it was game over. Before he could process what was happening, the lady jumped into the air and landed right in front of him, blocking his escape. Shocked, Xiaoling fell to the ground, paralyzed with fear as the lady approached him with piercing, glaring eyes. Desperate, he grabbed food from the stall and threw it at her, hoping it would slow her down. He shouted for her not to come any closer, but she didn't stop. Reaching for the last pack of food near him, he threw it toward her with all his strength, tightly squeezing his eyes shut and bracing for the worst. When nothing happened, Xiaoling hesitated before slowly opening his eyes. To his shock, the lady was standing still, happily enjoying the octopus snack he had thrown her. After chewing, she swallowed the snack and seemed happy to have eaten it. Xiaoling, watching her reaction, asked himself if zombies like to eat dried squid. Before he could finish the thought, she began moving closer to him with an eager and hungry look on her face. He panicked, realizing the dried squid was gone and unsure if she would eat anything else. Still, he quickly opened another snack and threw it to her when she got closer. To his relief, she accepted it and enjoyed it. Seeing this, Xiaoling began throwing more snacks on the ground while slowly backing away. When he finally felt the edge of the cliff beneath his feet, he glanced back and saw lava bubbling far below. Without hesitation, he threw a bag of chips off the cliff and shouted for her to go after it. She immediately jumped, speeding after the falling chips. He wiped the sweat off his forehead in relief and muttered that he had given her snacks, so she shouldn't eat him. Turning around, his eyes landed on a shining weapon lying on the ground. He picked it up and realized it was a high-grade dagger. His shock deepened when he noticed the symbol of the Thunder Legion etched onto the blade. He knew that the Thunder Legion was the most feared bandit organization in the apocalypse. Their leader was a power-type Esper, and every one of their subordinates was a ruthless desperado, burning, looting, and killing with no regard for the military. He figured those 3 men must have been from the Thunder Legion and thought it made sense that they had carried so many magazines. He then spotted the bag the men had left behind and decided it could be useful, so he picked it up. Something shiny inside caught his attention, and when he opened it, he was excited to find crystal cores. Hugging the bag, he celebrated, not expecting to complete his task so quickly. 2333 interrupted his excitement, telling him that although he had found the crystal cores, they couldn't be counted as store sales. Xiaoling argued back, asking why not, especially since the female zombie had accepted and eaten the dried squid and beef jerky. 2333 reluctantly agreed that the crystal cores belonged to her but reminded him that she was a zombie. Xiaoling retorted that the system never said customers had to be human and accused 2333 of being narrow-minded. Feeling defeated, Xiaoling lay on the ground and shouted to 2333 that it was already dark, there was no one else around, and if the system wasn't going to keep its promise, it might as well just kill him now. 2333 cursed internally, realizing it was in a pinch. With no choice left, 2333 congratulated him on completing the task. It informed him that he had gained experience points, unlocked his inventory and upgraded his stall. Suddenly, 2333 released a pushcart stall filled with brand new items and food. Xiaoling approached it eagerly and opened the legendary inventory. Inside he found water, rice, meat and vegetables. Disappointed, he asked 2333 if that was all. He compared it to other people's storage spaces which supposedly had medicines, weapons and even planes or cannons. 2333 explained that it was the food system, not the warrior system, earning Xiaoling's complaint that it was stingy. Still curious, he asked what his experience points could be exchanged for. 2,333 displayed options and each item's cost in points. However, Xiaoling only had 21 points. 2333 told him that with his current level of permission, he could only exchange points for basic items. Xiaoling scoffed at the shabbiness of it all and began worrying about his defense since the stall shield could only block attacks 3 times a day. He knew upgrades were necessary. Feeling determined, he told 2,333 to exchange everything for stamina. 2333 complied and increased his stamina by 1 point. After a brief pause, Xiaoling and 2333 stared at each other. He complained that he didn't feel any change, but 2333 ignored him and revealed his next mission: to earn 100 crystal cores within 24 hours and hire a waiter. Xiaoling shouted in disbelief at the difficulty of earning 100 crystal cores. He complained that the street stall was already tiny, and now they expected him to share it with someone else. As he continued his tirade, a flyer suddenly slapped against his face. Pulling it off, he saw an advertisement for a milk tea shop. The image on the flyer featured the same lady who used to hand out flyers near his school, encouraging students to try her drinks for free. Xiaoling worriedly wondered if she was still alive. Despite his concerns, he thought that working with such a beautiful woman wouldn't be so bad. Pushing his cart forward, he felt a surge of motivation. Meanwhile, back at the cliff, the white-haired lady jumped out of the lava and landed on the ground. She looked around, searching for any trace of Xiaoling but found nothing. Saddened, she paused for a moment before turning and beginning to run. The next day, Xiaoling arrived at the milk tea shop. Peeking inside, he was shocked to see zombies wandering around. He quickly closed the door, apologizing for the intrusion, and immediately pulled his cart. While running away, he muttered to himself, wondering if those were the same zombies he had met yesterday and why they were so persistent. 2333 reminded him that he was the one who had approached them first. As the zombies started chasing after him, one of them jumped toward his cart, but the cart shield activated and threw the zombie away. Xiaoling rushed behind his cart, yelling at the zombies not to waste his defense. He pushed the cart forward at full speed, and the zombie started moving again, bending its broken body and beginning to chase him. The zombie got close to biting his feet, but Xiaoling managed to pull his leg away just in time. He shouted in frustration, accusing the zombie of pulling his leg, then kicked it hard, sending it flying into a soda machine. The other zombies stopped in shock as the heavy machine fell, crushing several of them to death. Xiaoling stared in disbelief, unable to process that he had done that with a single kick to the head. He finally realized that the power boost from his stamina upgrade worked. 2333 congratulated him on his first kill and rewarded him with a disposable raincoat. Xiaoling picked it up skeptically, asking if it wasn't just a piece of plastic cloth. 2333 explained that he shouldn't underestimate the raincoat. It was made of high-tech materials that could block all harmful substances, and he could even swim in nuclear waste while wearing it. However, it could only be used once. Despite its impressive features, Xiaoling still found it hard to believe. Before he could dwell on it further, the sound of zombies approaching reached his ears. Looking ahead, he saw a massive swarm of zombies converging on his position. He guessed that the noise he had made earlier must have attracted them. Frantically looking around, he realized there was no way to retreat. Suddenly, a voice called out to him. Turning around, Xiaoling saw the yellow-haired lady standing in one of the stores, motioning for him to come over. At that moment, the zombies inside the crushed soda machine revived. The sounds of their movement triggered the nearby zombies, causing the swarm to rush toward him. Panicking, Xiaoling ran for his life toward the lady's store and successfully made it inside just in time. The zombies threw themselves against the door, but it was too strong for them to break through. Catching his breath, Xiaoling gratefully thanked the lady for saving him at the perfect moment. However, as he looked at her more closely, he recognized her. She asked him if he knew her, and Xiaoling eagerly explained that he was a student at a university where she used to promote milk tea. He reminded her that she had even treated him to a free drink once. The lady considered his words and thought to herself that he didn't seem particularly remarkable with his ordinary appearance. She figured there were probably countless students like him in university. Still smiling, she told him that she remembered him. She added that he was particularly good at basketball and loved peach-flavored pearl milk tea. Xiaoling immediately corrected her, telling her that he was actually on the football team and that he didn't even like eating peaches. She didn't mind it and just hugged his hand, telling him it was great to see him, which made him shy. When he felt her warm hug, he then realized that he still didn't know her name. She introduced herself as Ai Chen, and he introduced himself back. She sweetly called him brother, shocking him and making him cry because it was the first time in his life a girl had called him brother. He felt lucky because she was such a beautiful girl, but she wondered why he was crying. He was busy crying when he heard a can roll behind him. He immediately looked back, asking what it was and who was there. He picked up the can and wondered what it was. He was then shocked when he heard a loud banging sound coming from behind the door. He reached for the door's handle, but before he could open it, Chen shouted that there was a rat and hugged him in fear, shouting that she saw it. He asked her where it was and she dragged him in the other direction, telling him it had run over there, without noticing someone with red eyes hiding behind the door. He was about to check when suddenly Chen fell, acting dizzy. He panicked and asked her what was wrong. She replied that she was so hungry because she had been stuck there for 5 days without food. Realizing she was just hungry, he told her it was easy to fix. He then let her down and told her to wait because he would go make her something to eat. Excitedly, he began searching under his cart, asking what he should make: noodles, steamed buns, or cola chicken wings. She stared at him, thinking about the food, and walked closer to his cart. She noticed that he had eggs, flour, and even oil, and she wondered where he found so much food. Smiling, she thought he didn't expect that such a fat sheep like him would make her fortune. She picked up one of the eggs, but it vanished. Confused, she grabbed another egg, but when she moved it away from the cart, it also vanished, not realizing that ingredients from the snack cart could not be stolen and any items taken without Xiaoling's permission would automatically return to their original position. She wondered what was going on and if she was hallucinating. Walking closer to him, she thought about taking him down first and then claiming everything in the cart for herself. However, when she tried to grab the knife behind her back, she couldn't find it. Panicking and confused, she wondered where her knife had gone. He then asked her if she was looking for it while holding up the knife. She shouted that it was hers and demanded to know how it ended up in his hand. He explained that he had grabbed it when she pretended to be dizzy, but added that cooking requires a knife. Since his little shop had just opened and he didn't have the proper tools yet, he said he would borrow it for now and asked if she didn't mind. She stammered a reply saying no, but internally wondered how he knew she had a weapon on her and if he had been on guard against her the whole time. She then told him not to misunderstand, saying that she knew how hard it was for a girl to survive in the apocalypse, so the knife was just for self-defense. He simply told her that he believed her. She then asked if he could return the knife once he was done with it, to which he replied yes. After using it, he gave it back to her, telling her the knife was very sharp and advising her not to use it carelessly. She just smiled at him after getting the knife back and positioned herself, suddenly shouting that she thought it worked just fine. She then launched the knife at him, calling him a stupid kid who was so easy to fool and telling him he deserved it if he died. However, the cart shield deflected her attack and pushed her back. He calmly reminded her that he had told her not to mess around with it, but she just wouldn't listen. She shouted that he was an esper, accusing him of setting her up, and screamed that she would fight him to the death. She jumped and swung her leg down at him with force, but he calmly attacked her with pepper spray, hitting her eyes and making her scream in pain. Shouting that it burned, Chen rolled around on the floor, holding her eyes in pain. He grabbed the mustard and told her that if she couldn't handle spicy, she should have said so because he always made sure to cater to his customers' tastes. He then poured mustard powder on her, asking if she liked barbecue and suggesting adding a little mustard to it. She shouted for him to stop and coughed repeatedly, but he just called out to the people inside the room, warning them that if they didn't come out now, their comrade was going to be pickled. The room door suddenly burst open, and 2 kids rushed outside holding bats, shouting at him to let go of their boss. He was shocked to see them. The little boy shouted to Chen not to be afraid because they were there to rescue her, and the little girl yelled at him not to dare hurt their boss. He simply grabbed the kids and told them that at such a young age, they were already causing trouble and gathering a group to harm others. Chen stood up and shouted at him not to hurt them, challenging him to come at her instead if he had the guts. He threw the kids at her, reminding her that she was the one who said it, and they all stumbled to the floor. A moment later, he checked the room and found instant noodles, biscuits, and canned food. Looking back at the kids and Chen who were tied up, he remarked that it looked like many people had already fallen for their trick before him. Chen admitted that she had never failed until now and asked how he spotted the flaw. He simply replied that he could only say those people were just too stupid. He then picked up an open can and pointed out that Kin had claimed she'd been stuck there for 5 days without food, yet the can still had leftover soup in it, clearly opened not long ago. He also pointed at fresh bloodstains on the ground and observed that none of them had any wounds, concluding that someone else must have been injured or killed there. Feeling a chill, he realized he had almost become one of their victims. The little boy shouted at him that those people had it coming because, if they hadn't tried to take advantage of Chen, they wouldn't have fallen for the trick. The little girl agreed, shouting that they never tricked good people and only went after big bad guys like him. Hurt by their words, he wondered what made them think he looked like a bad guy. Chen then told him that, in the apocalypse, everyone was just trying to survive and they couldn't be blamed for it. He agreed with her and took out a knife, asking if it was fair that, now that they were in his hands, they couldn't blame him for whatever he decided to do. Worried, Chen asked what he intended to do, while the kids trembled in fear. He approached them, telling them that it had been a long time since he'd had fresh meat and that today might finally be the day he got a taste. The kids cried in fear, shouting that they didn't want to be eaten. He smirked at their reaction, getting revenge on the little punks for questioning his good looks. Chen suddenly shouted that if he was going to eat someone he should eat her instead and let the kids go because they were still young. The little girl begged him not to eat Kin, and the little boy shouted that adult meat wasn't tasty and that he should eat him instead because his meat was tender. Confused about what was going on, he stared at the three frauds acting all lovey-dovey, making him feel like the bad guy. Suddenly, the little girl coughed, and the little boy worriedly called out to his sister. Chen shouted that the little girl was hurt and that tying her up like that made it hard for her to breathe. He skeptically asked Kin if they were trying to trick him into loosening the ropes so they could stab him, but then Xiaoling coughed even more harshly. Still unconvinced, he remarked that her acting skills were better than Chen's. The little boy shouted that they weren't lying and Chen pleaded with him, saying that if it continued, the little girl would die. He ordered 2333 to check, and 2333 began scanning the little girl's vital signs. The system reported that the little had a severe infection in her body, which was already festering and spreading. Without treatment she wouldn't survive more than 3 days. Suddenly the girl coughed up blood, startling him. Without hesitation he cut the ropes, freeing her. He then freed the little boy and Chen as well, both of whom rushed to the little girl's side, worried as she collapsed in pain. A moment later, after changing her bandages, he stared at her wound and realized it was a gunshot wound. Shocked, he asked who could be so cruel to a child. Chen furiously replied that it was the Thunder Legion. Chen then sadly explained to him that the kid's mother was a regular customer at her store. When the apocalypse broke out, their family was buying milk tea there. She added that she had watched a lot of apocalyptic movies before, so when she saw someone biting another person on the street, she immediately felt that something was wrong and closed the store. Soon after, the news reported that it was a zombie virus outbreak and warned everyone not to go outside, leaving the customers trapped inside. At first, everyone remained united and encouraged each other to wait for rescue, but as days passed, food became scarce and people's true natures began to surface. One day, a man grabbed bread from the kid's mother. The mother asked him what he was doing and reminded him that the food was supposed to be shared. The man scoffed and asked why her children should get the same amount of food as an adult when her child was so small, suggesting that the three of them could share just one portion. The mother begged him to return the food, explaining that her daughter was sick and couldn't go without eating, but the man ate the bread anyway, telling her that her daughter didn't look like she would survive for more than 2 days, so giving her food was a waste. It was better for someone else to have it. At that moment, the little boy bit the man's arm, shouting that it was his sister's food. Furious, the man grabbed the boy and yelled that he would kill him for daring to bite him. The mother screamed her son's name, Xiaolei, in panic. Fortunately, Chen arrived in time, tripping the man and forcing him to let go of Xiaolei. Chen caught Xiaolei and confronted the man, asking why he was stealing from others. The man snapped back, asking her if she considered that small piece of bread food, saying it wasn't enough to feed anyone and that starvation would soon kill them anyway. Chen handed Lei back to his mother and scolded the man, calling him a coward for fighting children instead of zombies. Enraged, the man insulted her, shouting, "How dare you talk to me like that?" An old woman then interjected, pointing out how many people were there and that the small amount of food wasn't enough to feed everyone. She asked Chen if she could spare a little more. A young man added that, in the worst-case scenario, they could repay her after the apocalypse was over. Chen calmly explained to everyone that it was a milk tea shop, not a supermarket, and that all the food had already been taken out. The old woman, suspicious, pointed at the locked room and asked if Chen had taken everything out. She demanded to know why the door to that room was locked. Chen replied simply that it was the changing room, but the old woman shouted that she didn't believe her and insisted she open it. Chen retorted, asking why she should. The man then accused her of hiding food in the room, shouting that she was letting everyone starve while eating alone. The young man joined in, calling her selfish. The kid's mother tried to defend Chen, reminding everyone that they wouldn't have survived until now if it weren't for her. However, the man shouted at her to shut up, claiming he would have gone home long ago if not for Chen. The old woman agreed, shouting that if they had left earlier, they might have already been rescued by the government army and taken to a safe zone. Chen calmly told them that if they wanted to leave, they could go now. This angered the man even more, and he shouted at her for being so arrogant. Suddenly, the young man, the old woman, and the lady grabbed Chen and shouted for the man to break down the door. The man smashed the door open, shouting that she better just wait. When he looked inside, however, he found only clothes. Confused, he asked why there were so many skirts if it was a milk tea shop. The old woman scoffed, saying she knew Chen wasn't a decent woman. The lady clung to her boyfriend, loudly claiming that good girls don't dress like that and accusing Chen of seducing someone. Chen shouted at them, saying they were going too far. But before anyone could respond, the shop door exploded. A military vehicle bearing the logo of the Thunder Legion Guild crashed into the shop. A man wearing an eye patch got out and shouted, "There are people here." The man asked, "Who are they?" But one of the Thunder Legion eye-patched men grabbed the suspicious man and shouted that they were Thunder Legion and if he didn't want to die he should hand over the food. The man, terrified, begged them not to hit him and pointed at Chen, shouting that she had hidden all the food. The men then noticed the women. One of them shouted to his brothers excitedly, declaring that it had been a long time since they'd seen such a beautiful woman. They chased after Chen, the kid's mother, and the children as they fled. The arrogant lady from before was caught, and her boyfriend begged the men to spare him, offering up his girlfriend instead. One of the Thunder Legion men caught Chen, shouting for her not to run because he would make her fly. Chen immediately pulled out her knife and swung it at the man, but he dodged it. Angered, he pointed a gun at her and shouted that she was courting death. Suddenly, the little girl appeared in front of Chen to protect her, shouting for Chen to be careful. Before Chen could react, the little girl was shot, leaving Chen, Xiaolei, and the kid's mother horrified. The eye-patched man scolded the shooter, calling him an idiot and asking if he didn't know that shooting would attract zombies. In frustration, the long-haired man shot the arrogant lady in the head and ordered his men to evacuate immediately, shouting for them to leave nothing behind. The Thunder Legion members showed no mercy, shooting and killing several people in the tea shop without a second thought. Just as the gun was aimed at Chen and the two children, the children's mother suddenly rushed forward, grabbing the gunman's legs and begging them to hurry and run without worrying about her. With her desperate plea, Chen successfully escaped with the two children. Meanwhile, the children's mother pulled the pin of a grenade, sacrificing herself along with the Thunder Legion members. As they fled, Chen looked down at the two children in her arms and murmured to herself that she had promised Lu to protect them and had no choice but to do what she did to survive. However, she noted with concern that the little girl's wound was worsening every day. The system, observing their situation, remarked sympathetically that they were truly pitiful. Xiaoling, however, commented that they might look pitiful now, but earlier, when they tried to kill him, they had shown no mercy. Xiaoling understood the risks and burdens of carrying two children in the apocalypse, acknowledging how it brought unnecessary trouble and heightened the danger of death. Still, he recognized that Chen had survived so far through her struggles and hardships. Xiaoling inquired of the system if there was any medicine available to treat the child. The system responded that medicine existed but required unlocking a higher-level space, which his current permissions did not allow. Frustrated, Xiaoling expressed annoyance at the system, questioning its flexibility and pointing out how pitiful the child was. The system, seeing through Xiaoling's attempt to manipulate it, accused him of trying to get it to make an exception and upgrade his permissions. The system refused to be flexible but suggested another solution, explaining that the snack stall had a secondary function. Food made by the owner could have healing effects. Hearing this, Xiaoling felt a sense of relief and asked the system if there were any other surprises. The system replied that the healing effect depended on the owner's level, with higher levels offering better results. It clarified that at Xiaoling's current level, the effect on the little girl would rely on luck. Although the effect wasn't guaranteed, Xiaoling decided to try. With the girl's condition worsening, he chose to make an egg waffle, a snack he had loved as a child. He gave it to the little girl and encouraged her to try it. After eating it, the little girl excitedly declared that her pain had vanished. Both Chen and Xiaoling examined her and found that her fever had subsided and her wound had begun to heal. Chen, noticing the change, speculated that it might be due to the egg waffle and wondered aloud if Xiaoling was an ability user. Xiaoling, unwilling to reveal the truth, stated that the little girl's recovery was only preliminary and that for a full recovery she would need to eat his egg waffles regularly, for which he would charge next time. Chen quickly agreed, promising him all the food in the room as long as he could cure the little girl. However, Xiaoling clarified that he didn't need food and instead expressed a desire for her assistance. His request angered the children, who accused him of having ulterior motives involving Chen and vowed to protect her. The children, looking at him with resolute eyes, refused to believe otherwise. Xiaoling explained helplessly that they could work at his snack stall as employees, with meals and accommodations included. Ignoring his explanation, the three began discussing among themselves. They concluded that Xiaoling seemed powerful and decided that following him would ensure free food and security, which was a good deal. After their discussion, Chen accepted his offer on the condition that the little girl and Xiaolei stay with her. Xiaoling, looking at the three together, began doubting whether he had made the right decision. Chen, fearing he might reconsider or refuse, immediately handed him a contract to formalize their agreement. Just as they were negotiating the contract's contents, something was suddenly thrown into the stall. A group of well-equipped individuals entered, drawn by the scent of the egg waffles. Xiaoling immediately stepped in front of the little girl to shield her. The large man among them, suspecting a fight, prepared himself but paused when Xiaoling, with a quick change in demeanor, addressed them courteously. He introduced himself as the owner of the snack stall and offered to make fresh egg waffles for them. The bulky man, who seemed less sharp, turned to his leader and expressed his desire to try the waffles. The leader, scrutinizing Xiaoling, inquired about their cost. Noticing their attire, Xiaoling deduced their significant background and assumed they had plenty of crystal cores. Seizing the opportunity, he quoted his price. The leader, shocked by the cost of 10 crystal cores per waffle, questioned whether they were made of gold. Xiaoling defended the price, explaining that life in the apocalypse was challenging and food was earned at great cost, making his price reasonable. Though skeptical, the leader agreed to purchase 10 waffles. As Xiaoling began preparing them, the bulky man issued a threat, warning him of consequences if the waffles weren't good. Xiaoling muttered under his breath about the man's lack of authority to judge, but his comment was overheard by the leader, who questioned whether Xiaoling was implying they might back out of payment. Qin, stepping in to ease the tension, apologized for Xiaoling's bluntness and flattered the leader, remarking on his impressive physique and suggesting he must be skilled at killing zombies. The leader, flustered, stammered in agreement. The others observed their leader's reaction with discomfort, noting his inability to handle compliments from a pretty woman. Qin assured the leader that making so many waffles would take time and invited them to wait inside. Xiaoling, observing her smooth handling of the situation, felt reassured about hiring her. Soon, the group tasted the freshly made waffles and found themselves deeply impressed. The nostalgic flavor took them back to their childhoods. The leader complimented Xiaoling's cooking skills and paid him the agreed amount. Pleased, the leader asked if Xiaoling could prepare other kinds of food. Xiaoling enthusiastically listed various dishes he could make but explained that he currently lacked the necessary ingredients. The leader confidently offered to supply anything Xiaoling needed. Qin suggested to Xiaoling that the group might be post-apocalypse traders, and forming a partnership with them could eliminate the risks of scavenging for food themselves. The two of them smiled and suggested to the leader that they work together long-term, asking what the price of the ingredients would be. The leader's subordinates, hearing them refer to their boss as boss, couldn't stop laughing. One of them teased, saying that their big brother was indeed the boss, but it was a business without profit. Xiaoling and Qin immediately felt that something was off upon hearing this. Suddenly, the leader asked about a man named Uzi. One of his subordinates responded that they had already sent people to look for him, adding that he had left a mark on the road and that they should be arriving soon. As soon as the subordinate finished speaking, the sound of tires screeching outside was heard. A man rushed in, breathless, and informed the leader that there was bad news. Uzi and the others had been hurt. Zai and his companions were then helped out of the car and brought into the room. Xiaoling recognized them as the same 3 people he had encountered the day before. The leader immediately inquired about who had attacked them. One of the injured men painfully explained that it had been a kid selling snacks on the street who claimed to be the chosen one. The leader scoffed internally, dismissing the claim as nonsense and thinking it sounded like something out of a novel, noting that there was no such thing as a chosen one. The man continued, explaining that at first they hadn't believed the claim, but the kid was truly strange since all of their attacks had been reflected at them, even causing Uzi to get blown up. The others were confused by this information, wondering whether the kid was an ability user, although they had never heard of such a power. Qin, listening to the description, felt a jolt in her heart. The ability seemed both strange and familiar. Turning to look at Xiaoling, who was trying to sneak away, she immediately realized they were talking about him. Lu Hong angrily declared that no matter who dared to touch him, they had to die. Upon hearing Lu Hong's name, Xiaoling, Qin, and the others were all shocked as they knew exactly who he was. Qin confirmed his identity and realized that he was the leader of the Thunderbolt Legion. Lu Hong didn't deny it and nodded, confirming that he led the Thunderbolt Legion. He added that, for the sake of their delicious egg waffles, they could come to him if they ran into trouble. He also said they could consider the matter of food supplies. However, to Lu Hong's surprise, the 2 children angrily rushed forward, accusing him of hurting their sister and killing their mother. Lu Hong froze, his face turning cold, and questioned what the child was screaming about, asking who had killed their mother. The others also began to wonder if there had been a misunderstanding, noting that while the Thunderbolt Legion might be a gang of robbers, they had never harmed women or children. Qin, however, ignored their explanations and immediately kicked Lu Hong with all her might, initiating a fierce battle. The other members of the Thunderbolt Legion merely watched the fight without intervening. Xiaoling, who had been observing from the sidelines, suddenly recalled the shield function of his food stall. Having already used it twice that day, he knew he only had one chance left. He decided to move the stall to a safer spot to avoid harming anyone. His actions caught the attention of Uzi and the others. Liang, noticing Xiaoling's movement, became enraged. He hadn't expected to be tricked by Xiaoling, who not only attacked his brother but also took advantage of the situation to earn a lot of crystal cores. Xiaoling tried to explain that it was just a misunderstanding. However, the injured subordinates were unwilling to let him go. Lu Hong, uninterested in any further excuses, threw a punch at Xiaoling, eager to assess his capabilities. Lu Hong's punch shattered the hard cement ground, sending shockwaves through the area. Xiaoling realized for the first time the true power of a strength-type ability user, thinking that if the punch had landed he would likely be dead. Before Xiaoling could recover, Lu Hong lunged forward for another attack, causing Xiaoling to spit blood. Lu Hong was surprised to see that, despite being hit, Xiaoling hadn't been severely injured, which suggested that the kid was stronger than an average person. After being hit again, Xiaoling's abdomen showed clear signs of injury. Analyzing the situation, he concluded that if he continued dodging, he stood no chance of winning. Even with his increased strength, he couldn't deal any significant damage to someone like Lu Hong. Suddenly, he noticed the food stall nearby and an idea came to him. He thought that if he used the stall's shield function, the rebound effect would increase with the external force attacking it. With a plan in mind, Xiaoling braced himself to face Lu Hong's attack but instead slid underneath Lu Hong's body, heading toward the food stall. Just as he thought his plan would succeed, Xiaolei grabbed a knife and charged directly at Lu Hong. Lu Hong's subordinates immediately drew their guns and began firing at Xiaolei to protect their leader. Xiaoling, frustrated, muttered about how they had claimed not to harm kids. He then grabbed his food stall and used it to block the bullets aimed at Xiaolei. With the shield function now gone, however, Xiaoling left himself vulnerable to Lu Hong's attack. As he prepared for what seemed like a certain death, he reflected on how his chance to become a protagonist had been cut short. At that moment, a loud explosion broke the silence, and Xiaoling squinted to see a stunning sight, a beautiful zombie making a dramatic entrance. The zombie, moving with lightning speed, knocked Lu Hong to the ground in one swift move. Everyone was shocked, having never expected their boss to be overpowered by a woman. Uzi and his group immediately recognized her as the zombie they had captured the day before. Realizing that she was a zombie, the others drew their weapons and fired at her. The zombie effortlessly dodged the bullets and landed gracefully on Gao Xiaoling's food stall. Seeing the stall about to be ruined, Gawang shouted in frustration, demanding that they fight without destroying his stall. One of Lu Hong's subordinates, who had previously been hit by Jie Xiong, raised a heavy cannon and fired at the zombie. Xiaoling, thinking the stall was doomed, was surprised when the zombie skillfully moved it out of the way while dodging the cannonball. Xiaoling, impressed by her cleverness, gave her a thumbs up. The missed cannonball struck the ceiling, causing a wooden plank to fall and hit Lu Hong on the head, leaving a noticeable bump. Furious, Lu Hong scolded his subordinates for their incompetence. Regaining his composure, Lu Hong ordered all his men to open fire on the zombie and Gao Xiaoling's group. Facing the onslaught, Gawang and the others fled for their lives. The zombie, noticing their retreat, grew angry but acted quickly. She grabbed a steel rod and hurled it in the direction of the shooters, accurately hitting one of them. A gun malfunctioned and spun rapidly, firing bullets and causing significant injuries to the Thunderbolt Corps members. Someone shouted for everyone to stop shooting, warning that they would end up killing themselves. When the shooting stopped, everyone cautiously peeked out, eager to assess the situation. They quickly scanned the area, searching for the beautiful zombie. Just then, the zombie girl appeared right in front of Xiaoling, startling him and the others, which forced them to run in panic. The zombie girl, not understanding why Xiaoling was running, decided to give chase. At the same time, the giant octopus monster, which had been observing from the ceiling, extended its tentacles and prepared to attack Xiaoling. The beautiful zombie noticed the attack and immediately stepped in front of him to shield him but was swept away by the giant octopus's tentacle. The giant octopus threw the zombie girl forcefully into the wall, causing her to suffer heavy injuries. Xiaoling rushed to her side, confused and wondering why she had protected him. The zombie girl weakly extended her hand, revealing a bag of chips. It turned out she had come all the way just to bring him this small gift. Seeing her in such pain, Xiaoling felt a pang of sympathy and asked the system whether she was a zombie and why she acted so human. The system explained that while she carried the zombie virus, some mutated strains allowed partial brain function during evolution, enabling human-like intelligence. It further clarified that her IQ was similar to that of a smart animal or a 4 to 5-year-old child. Xiaoling, still confused, realized that the pain the beautiful zombie was enduring was because of him. He wanted to save her but knew the egg waffles only worked on humans, and healing other creatures required special tasks to obtain the necessary items. He immediately requested a new task from the system, asking for a mission that would allow him to acquire a level 2 crystal core within 24 hours. The system responded that a level 2 crystal core was worth 100 normal crystal cores and could only be found in evolved zombies or mutated beasts. Determined, Xiaoling made up his mind. His target was clear: he had to kill the giant octopus monster in front of him to obtain the core. Meanwhile, the Thunderbolt Corps fired at the giant octopus monster, but its massive size made it impervious to bullets. A man, unwilling to accept defeat, decided to use his cannonball to attack the creature, hoping to blow it to pieces. Initially, they thought they could destroy the monster, but after several minutes, the cannonball still had not exploded. The man's companions speculated that it might be a dud. When the smoke from the cannonball cleared, they realized the giant octopus had absorbed it, holding it firmly. The giant octopus monster retaliated against its attackers by spraying a highly corrosive liquid. Seeing this, Lu Hong quickly raised a concrete slab to block the liquid. The giant octopus slammed its tentacle onto the slab while continuing to spray. To everyone's shock, the liquid was strong enough to dissolve the slab. One of the men urged the others to forget about them and escape. As Lu Hong struggled with the slab, one of the tentacles pierced through and grabbed a man. Lu Hong tried to grab the octopus's body, but its slimy surface made it impossible to hold. Meanwhile, the octopus continued spraying more corrosive liquid, creating chaos. Just when Lu Hong was at his wit's end, Xiaoling, wearing a disposable raincoat, rushed forward. Unafraid of the corrosive liquid, he charged at the giant octopus's head. The others assumed Xiaoling might have special powers, but Lu Hong realized he had no energy fluctuations. Xiaoling skillfully dodged the octopus's attacks and quickly inserted his knife into the cannonball, triggering it. The cannonball exploded with a deafening blast. When the smoke cleared, the giant octopus had been blown to pieces, and some of its tentacles shattered. Xiaoling, impressed with his raincoat, though it had not only protected him from the liquid but also shielded him from the explosion's shockwave. He asked the system whether he could get more raincoats next time. The system explained that rewards were randomly drawn but assured him that good performance would always yield opportunities. Xiaoling then found the level 2 crystal core in the remains of the octopus. After completing the task, the system rewarded him with a healing candy for any living being and a book titled Survival Cooking Guide. The system explained that during the apocalypse, many mutated creatures and plants could be eaten if their infected parts were removed. However, most people were either unaware of this or too fearful to try. The guide detailed the anatomy and preparation of these creatures and plants, making it an essential resource for anyone planning to run a food stall in the apocalypse. Xiaoling, realizing the book's value, quickly stored it away. He then fed the healing candy to the zombie woman, whose condition visibly improved. Seeing her recovery, a little girl clapped joyfully. Qin, meanwhile, observed Xiaoling with curiosity, noting how his demeanor had changed, wondering if he had been hiding his true strength or if something else was at play. Xiaoling and the zombie girl began tossing snacks, much to Xiaoling's delight. However, Xiaolei cautiously asked Xiaoling if the zombie woman, being a zombie, would bite them. The zombie girl then approached the girl, licking off her face before chasing Xiaolei. Xiaolei, terrified and embarrassed, hurriedly ran away. Lu Hong approached Xiaoling, hoping he could heal his injured men since he had healed the zombie. Xiaoling examined the injured and found their wounds severe, with rotting skin and visible bones. Lu Hong impatiently demanded that Xiaoling heal them immediately. Xiaoling, noting Lu Hong's commanding tone, questioned why he should help, considering Lu Hong had beaten him earlier. Lu Hong, understanding the implication, asked how many crystal cores he wanted. Before Xiaoling could respond, Qin intervened, declaring that no matter how many nuclei Lu Hong offered, Xiaoling wouldn't help. Lu Hong explained that while they were thieves, they had principles and did not kill those who couldn't resist. He asserted that if the children's mother had been killed by his men, she must have been a bad person. This statement infuriated the children, and Qin accused Lu Hong of lying, suggesting he wanted to heal his men first before attacking them. However, Xiaoling interrupted and affirmed that what Lu Hong said was true.